Now, after talking about expressions, conditional statements, and loops, we will talk about functions. And we have already encountered functions since we have introduced map and reduce and as well as for each on arrays. So functions, so let's just go back to our IDE. Functions can be expressed using the following. First is, let's just create an array again. And there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Array dot for each. And then we create a function here. Let's say an item. Console.log item. So for this one, this is an anonymous function. If we want to create a function with a variable, or I mean with the name, we use this one. Start and then we can also use a arrow function, so like end. So this is start, or I mean this is the normal what I call a normal function, and this is called an arrow function. We can also create an arrow function, so like let's say for each item. So this is an anonymous arrow function. So these are the things that these are the functions that we can use. Of course, whenever we are calling a function for these anonymous functions, because they are part of the they are a parameter in, let's say, the for each method in an array, then we don't need to know how to call them because they are automatically called within that method once an event has happened. We will talk about it later. But for these cases like start and end, we just use the usual calling of functions that we have done already at the in the course of the discussion. So if we do this, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, start and end. Now, if we want to add like parameters, like let's say we create a function add a b, and then return a plus b. So we can call 1, 2. So we do this, we get the return 3. Now for this example, we have used parameters in this one. And when I say parameters, what we can get from here is that we can, so like for this example, fx is equals to add, and then we console.log fx. So for this one, we have passed the 1 and 2 as parameters to be put on a and b. Now if we remove 2, it becomes none because there's no value that is put on b. So if we check the value in a and b inside the function, we have 1 and an undefined. So we can sort of put a default value, let's say 5, if there is no value in here that was passed, and we can see that it becomes 6. So that's one way of like setting up your default values on parameters, on parameters in functions. Now, given what we have done already, of course, this is a simple example, and I know it's easier to just write x equals a plus b. But for the sake, what if we want to like modularize and create additional functions like function power, which is, let's say, a b. Excuse me. If we do this, let's say, because a and b is let I is equals to 0, I is less than b, I plus plus. Let's have let result is equals to 1, and then result is times equal b, oh no, not b, but a, then return result. So let's try this one. Let's see if I got my math right. So I'm correct. So what I did was to create a power. So that means if a is raised to b, then that's the result. And this is how we are able to do it. We created the loop inside, and now I can use power whenever I want to use the power in the exponential exponents in essence. And the thing is, I don't need to copy paste this code. I'll just have to call the function name. So that's one of the things that we can do, or that we can use. The other is if we want to create a Fibonacci, not Fibonacci, if we want to create recursion. So let's say we want to create Fibonacci. So I'm using the arrow functions here. So like it's just taking a number, and if the number, we know that in Fibonacci, if the number is less than or equal to 1, it will return it will return 1. Else it will need to return Fibonacci number minus 1 plus Fibonacci number minus 2. So let's see if I got this right, because I forgot already my Fibonacci. So let's try 1 first. Let's see if it's going to be correct. Okay, of course it's 2. That's 2. And if it's 3, that's 1 plus 2 is equals to 3. Or, and if it's 4, let's see. Yeah, so that means that's 1, 2, 3. Okay. And 5, it should be 8. That's 8. So, we have shown you that when it comes to recursion, this is a good way of doing loops as well. When you know that using the same function would help doing the loop. And if you know there's a base value that will not use the same function so that it will not do an infinite loop. The difference between the arrow function and the calling or using the function keyword can be more or manifested when it comes to the scoping. So like for this example, I'm going to use x equals 1 and y is equals to function using a function. Oops, not and then we console.log x, no, not x, this dot x, and then z is a arrow function, console.log this dot x. And so let's try it out. obj dot j dot y and obj dot z. And if we try this out, we have, let's remove this, we have 1 and undefined. And just for the sake, because I'm going to use this one variable, we do this, you can see that this x here in z uses the variable, and for the function, this dot x in y uses the object itself. So take note of this when it comes to like using function or arrow functions here, because when you are using the this keyword to represent the object that you are working with, it's better to use the function method implementation, function keyword method implementation, instead of the using the arrow function implementation. Now the cool thing here is that given this, we can, in essence, let's say this dot x equals to this dot x plus 5. So if we do this, control y, and then we do obj dot x, it's actually manipulating already the state of that object, making it look like it's a object-oriented programming, or I mean, in this one, you have your methods and you have your properties of an object. Now, the problem with this is that it's very tedious to create this kind of structure whenever you want to create a new instance of the same structure, like x, y, and z. So the best way to do this is to transform this into a class. And one of the old ways of creating a class is using the function itself, making it as a constructor. So like this is obj class, which maybe gets in a variable, and this becomes x equals x. And there are two ways to define a function. One is using this. So let's just do +5, and let's do it again. Let's create first a instantiation of that object class. So let's do this, and then obj dot y and console.log obj dot x. So let's see, and again it becomes 6. If I change this to 2, it should be 7. So that's one way of setting up a function. And if you are using the old way of creating a class, the other is obj class dot prototype dot y is equals to that same function. So yeah, so meaning this becomes a constructor only, and this is how you define a function. Again, it will return the same value. Now this is how this is how you do classes in years before, but now we have class itself, the class keyword, and we just have to set up a constructor here, which will be the same, this dot x equals x, and instead of creating a prototype, we just do this dot x is equals to this dot x plus 5, and we just need to remove this. Again, it will return 7. So we just create a new class. The other cool thing about classes is that you can extend obj class, and then we create another constructor which takes in a val let's say for this value, we for this extension we want to super x, and then this dot y equals to y, and then we can not this dot y, let's have z. We can then overwrite y to have this dot x is equals to this dot x plus this dot z. And then we can also have another function, this dot y or this dot z is equals to this dot z times 2. So if we create it, object 2 is equals to new object class extension 2 7, then we do this console.log object dot x, and obj a console.log obj dot z. Obj2, this should be obj2, my bad on that one. So as you can see, this one is 9, this one is 14, because 7 times 2 is 14, 7 plus 2 is equals to 9, and so on and so forth. So that's how we create a function in here with classes. Now of course there are already built-in classes. One of them is already the object class and the array class. We have already defined before that we can also create an array using this one. Another class that we have is the date class, which we can do this to determine the current date. So if we click on it, of course you can see that this is 2 a.m. because that's the only time I can record videos here at the house without with peace and quiet. And then if we also set, like, let's say June 15 1986 on 1968, I just want to like show these values. As you can see, it's a Saturday, June 15, 1968. Then we can get, let's say, the get month, which is a method in that regard. We can get 5 starting from 0, which is January. 5 is of course June. If we say date, we can get the 15. If we say year or get full year, get the 1968. If we say day, you get 6, which is the Saturday. Let's just make it into 17. We have 1, so it starts at 0, which is Sunday. So if we put it on 16, it becomes 0. So just for reference, I'm just going to show it again, the date that we have put. So it's a Sunday 0 on the date itself. So those are the things that we can get. We can also get the Unix epoch, get time. So if we do this, we'll get, oops, because we're using 1968, let's have 2003. We'll get this number, which is an integer, which is the number of milliseconds that elapse since January 1st, 1970. So that is for this part about classes and functions, and let's go to the next video.